The director of the finance department wanted to cut travel expenses for the exhibition, but ended up causing the company $2 million in losses. Many years ago, I worked for a company that hired an incredibly stupid financial organization when management first decided to clean things up. Honestly, this story is more about my boss than about me. We had a travel team, a group of volunteers from sales and IT, who traveled in full force with equipment and technicians to set up booths, demos, and network at exhibitions. Some exhibitions were in big cities, and you could go to supplier parties and hang out with salespeople who for some reason were mostly fun-loving drinkers. We had a kind of seniority system for who could go on trips, but no one really complained, and everyone got their turn. You went to DEF CON last year, now it's my turn. Okay, fair. The travel team coordinator was also a volunteer position, but usually it was someone higher up, like a manager. He handled organizational issues, equipment delivery, rentals, expenses, travel plans, payment for exhibition space. He also got a lot of freebies from our partner sales departments, which he then passed on to the team. For all participants, it was a kind of bonus. But when the new CFO came, she introduced a bunch of new strict rules. Some of them were as follows. The team is not entitled to expense reimbursement without company approval. By the way, now no one got approval after the trip. The team could not have their own credit card, nor even a corporate one. They were issued gift cards for a fixed amount, like $150, which had to be spent on all expenses. Unfortunately, the places where we needed it, airlines, car rentals, hotels, gas stations, toll roads, didn't accept gift cards. The finance department denied that these were gift cards and even banned mentioning the word in meetings. We were told to say pre-approved credit balance, sort of. And for the rest of the world, they were 100% regular gift cards with the same limitations. Next, no matter how far in advance you asked for something to be approved, the finance department almost always dragged it out until the last minute, and usually after a dozen reminders, which caused extra expenses, expedited shipping, same-day rental penalties, inflated airfare prices. If they forgot to do something, it was your fault or your manager's fault because you didn't remind them enough times. Reminded them 4 times to buy plane tickets for the team, but they didn't do it? Should have reminded them 5 times, so it's your fault. And all this was because of the CFO's assertion that such measures would reduce fraud, even though that had never happened with us at all. She had a Dolores Umbridge, from Harry Potter approach. Suddenly, someone, somewhere, might indulge in something extra. She was a bitch with a smug smirk. She annoyingly shook her head when condescendingly explaining something to herself, so we'll call her Dolores. For her, the travel team just attached receipts and got reimbursed. Dolores covered this up by claiming the team coordinator was just blowing it all on steaks and wine. He, of course, told her to fuck off and quit. In his absence, Dolores presented all the gifts from suppliers as a shining example of theft and freebies, which she supposedly put an end to. Oh yes, behold the great swindler sitting on a throne of Airborne Express stress balls and free Uline catalogs. Ultimately, these duties fell to my manager. He had never participated in trips and didn't really know how things worked, so he didn't push back against Dolores until he went on a trip with the team himself. He was surprised that he didn't have an expense account or a corporate card. When he asked, they gave him a gift card. Tried to use it, and it didn't work almost anywhere except some restaurants. He paid for everything else with his personal American Express card, including expenses for the entire team, and was denied reimbursement because he didn't get pre-approval. He was out over $40,000 for a 2-week trip. Of course, he complained to senior management. Dolores threatened to quit if she wasn't allowed to do her job, and top managers hadn't dealt with her before and were rather limp, not wanting to be the bad guys. Like, well, she says you can use the gift cards. When my manager explained that they were being declined everywhere, Dolores claimed he just didn't try hard enough, was afraid of conflict, needed to be a big boy and stand up for his rights. Ultimately, under pressure from lawyers, management did reimburse him. After that, Dolores arranged for certain things to be paid in advance: hotels, tickets, truck rentals, shipping. Well, and everything was done last minute, like trying to book hotel rooms or cars on the day a major event started. Naturally, everything was already booked. Or booking the wrong hotel. Washington, D.C. is not Washington State, or sending a package that could have cost $40 for $250 because they dragged it out until the last minute. The finance department also had no idea how much anything actually cost, or how we saved money by doing things ourselves. Sometimes everything went through one place, The team arrived at the hotel, and it turned out the finance department hadn't entered the payment details. For example, for the security deposit that almost all hotels require, and no one could reach them. So again, all expenses fell on the employees' personal cards. And again, Dolores said they just shouldn't believe what the hotel clerk says. The exhibition, union, or the stupid minimum wage guy at the toll booth. They need to fight. We don't have to coddle these people if they're afraid of conflict. Have you ever argued with a toll booth worker on the New Jersey Turnpike? She hasn't either. After 2 such disasters, my manager said, "Enough. No more volunteers for these events. I won't approve vacation time for this." He refused to be the travel coordinator in the future because he simply couldn't afford it. It was an unpopular decision, to put it mildly, but he told us, just wait, let her do things her way. And he was a master of passive-aggressive sabotage. And without resistance, Dolores shifted into high gear with her smug smirk. Now we'll work like a real company. And this led to the next problem. Some trips were to major cities like Chicago, New York, Washington, etc. Dolores started whining again that everyone was rushing there to have a corporate binge on the company dime. Management weakly objected. "Well, yes, otherwise we won't have volunteers." But Dolores wasn't satisfied. Then she decided to implement a lottery among employees. Anyone could apply to participate in a trip, and she supposedly randomly selected who would go. To make it fair. This fairness, by the way, suspiciously often leaned towards her own subordinates, but we'll get to that later. The whole point of these exhibitions wasn't to take a vacation, as Dolores always claimed. She never understood why we even went there. To develop business. IT people needed to go to install and set up equipment, and salespeople needed to go for communication and networking. But this idea never penetrated her consciousness. Well, and since those very IT specialists and techs who were already forbidden to go didn't want to pay for everything themselves, we just stopped volunteering. As a result, random employees from other departments who had no idea how to work at an exhibition, how to behave, or what to do at all, started getting into the team. And it turned into a disaster. Imagine, a marketing assistant from the 5th floor wins a trip and suddenly finds out she has to pay for everything out of her own pocket. And Dolores always sent someone from her own department with the team to keep an eye on everyone. But they also didn't know how exhibitions work. They only knew how to agree with Dolores and endure her control freak tendencies. What's a union fee? What's a corkage fee? No, we didn't authorize any union to connect our electricity. Just plug the booth cord into the outlet. Not allowed? Who are they? Well, then don't use screens in the booth. We're not selling TVs. Did you know that if you have a conflict with the Exhibition Center Union and refuse their services, they still bill you, but at the maximum rate? Yeah, Dolores and her team didn't know that either. And believe me, paying these guys a couple thousand up front is much cheaper than paying fines later. She, of course, tried to fight because she wasn't afraid of conflict, but lost spectacularly. The irony is that despite Dolores' constant assurances to the contrary, those very non-IT and non-sales people who did go ended up treating it exactly like a company-paid vacation, just as she feared. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. At first, they were shocked that they had to work, and then, when word got around, no one else applied for the lottery, so there were no volunteers at all. And then Dolores started sending interns. Interns! You could write a whole novel out of this nightmare. Imagine sending a bunch of students to Vegas, telling them they have to pay for everything themselves, and then putting them in work conditions where they are guaranteed to mess up. I'm sure quite a few laws were broken then. After this, Dolores started sending chaperones with them. Again, her lackeys from the finance department. As a result, the company got hit with huge fines for all sorts of violations, including deposits for the interns. The interns got into trouble so often that Dolores started hiring floor monitors in the hotel, and the adults had to work all day on their feet at the exhibitions and then report back to their rooms upon returning. She also crammed 4 to 6 people into one room. As if it was a school band, she even bought breathalyzers so no one would drink. For adults, she treated adults like this. The sales department called it a PR disaster, and my boss said, "Wait, just wait, let her drown herself." In the first year alone, travel expenses increased by over 0%. You heard right, 4,000%. Trips that used to cost $3,600 now cost $144,000 or more, mainly due to fines and rush charges. Annual expenses grew from $110,000 to over 2 point something million. Due to the complete chaos, we lost a bunch of booked booths and renewal rights, meaning we lost half the exhibitions and looked like idiots in front of clients. And the main point of participating in these exhibitions was networking. So now there was simply no point in going. The sales department repeatedly pointed this out to Dolores, but in response, she doubled down and a year later simply canceled the travel team. Finally, management intervened. They fought with Dolores for a whole year until she left for personal reasons or to spend time with family. Then it took almost 2 years to rebuild the team from scratch. People got corporate cards again. The role of travel coordinator became a full-fledged position. And when we hired a new person for it, he took over all the financial matters. Things got much better. And in the very first year, he saved the company a ton of money. And there was general rejoicing. Changed. So, a few edits based on popular questions. Why wasn't she fired when expenses grew from $110,000 to $2.1 million? There are several reasons, but the main one is she was the CFO. I think in her reports, she smoothed over all the mistakes. Plus, we had great years in the early 2000s. If we made $2 million one year and $3 million the next, the losses could go unnoticed. Until someone realized it should have been $6 million. That's my theory, based on what happened later. Dolores befriended 2 top managers, and rumor has it, she had a heart-to-heart talk with them about the company's financial situation, and that's how she got hired. In the second year, several directors quit, including friends of management, who later invited us out for drinks and spilled the beans. And the exhibition problems were just one of her fuck-ups. She also screwed up one of the key supply channels, dumped the market, made a couple of enemies, nearly destroyed the company, and handed over some of the most lucrative supplier contracts to competitors, violating an anti-monopoly agreement. There was much more, but it involved specific people, which I'm not at liberty to discuss. What happened to the Christmas party? The Christmas party wasn't particularly interesting, or rather, it just didn't happen. This was closer to the end of this whole saga, with the "now we'll work like a real company." But as soon as the travel budget grew from $110,000 to $2.1 million, the party apparently flew to the very bottom of her priority list. I'm not even sure she knew it needed to be held. Some think she was siphoning money from there to hide the colossal costs of the exhibition, fuck-ups, but I doubt the budgets came from the same source. Somewhere in November, people started asking, "Don't we have New Year's parties every year?" But no one knew who was even in charge of it. Usually, it was handled by 3 employees who had left the company the previous year, mostly because of Dolores. Though they didn't organize it themselves either. They hired contractors, and it was held in some expensive hotel. Our fiscal year is January to December, so December is crunch time on all fronts. And for Dolores, it was her first full fiscal year. She had come at the end of the previous one, so finances were already a mess anyway. How was she fired? She simply made too many enemies in the company. It took some time, but after a year and a half of work, she accumulated so much negativity that she couldn't move normally in any direction. Powerful passive resistance started. This completely threw her off balance, and she tried to stage some kind of internal coup, which no one supported. And in the end, she was, to put it mildly, not herself. When it had been 2 years since her arrival, she started taking sabbaticals until one of them became permanent. Her assistant temporarily took her place, but was later fired too. And then they brought in a consulting group that created a new finance department. It was they who proposed making the travel coordinator position full-time and paid. The woman hired for that role was simply fire. Is it true she tried to sell company merch? Dolores was shocked that we just gave away stickers, pins, t-shirts, and keychain flashlights with the company slogan at exhibitions. She demanded that we at least charge symbolically for them, but as far as I know, no one followed her order. I distinctly remember her sending a memo complaining that many keychains were missing, and she saw them on employees' desks. They cost the company money, and she wanted to charge employees $3 a piece for them. Rumor has it she wanted to charge attendees at exhibitions. And now on to the next story. The idiot boss secretly wanted to fire me and have me train my own replacement, but I was warned about his plan. The players. Names changed, of course. Bob, the boss at the time, an older man who doesn't get technology but has been with the company a long time, hence became my boss. Hans, the hero of this story, a school friend, works at the same company but in a different department and in management. It was he who helped me get the job 4 years ago. Carolina, a colleague, not exactly a star, but diligent. Carl, a regular employee, has been with the company about 6 years, mostly servicing old clients. He has a family. He's always busy. And me? Well, I'm me. A 20-something guy, a bit of a nerd, loves computers. Our company was small, and our team of 3 was something like tech support for clients, but with extended functions. I usually help set up databases and sometimes advise clients on whether it was beneficial for them to switch tariffs, for example. Like any tech support, we got tickets from clients and dealt with them one by one. I liked complex tasks and worked hard on them. And Carolina, it turned out, liked more standard tasks. She preferred doing what she already knew, instead of encountering something new every day. Nothing wrong with that. In the end, we worked well together and had unspoken rules about who took which tickets. And everyone won. Me, Carolina, the company, and the client. But then we got a new boss, Bob, and he immediately noticed that I processed fewer tickets than Carolina. I tried to explain that not all tickets are equal in terms of effort, but since he didn't really understand technology, he simply didn't grasp half of what I did. About a month later, we got a huge new client, and I spent a week at their office setting up databases and everything they needed. Because of this, my average ticket count for the month dropped even further. Well, duh, obviously. If Bob had a single functioning neuron, he would have figured that out himself. And then he said something I never expected. We need help, and he got approval to hire a 4th team member. I was happy, like everyone else. We had this big new client, and the company was growing fast. Overall, it sounded logical. He even specifically asked me to handle candidate selection and training the new employee. Apparently, he realized he had no clue what we did, and I didn't mind. That same day, Hans calls me, which is weird because he usually texts, not calls. He says, "Come over tomorrow. I have beer that urgently needs company." The next day I went to him. We just chatted about life. We see each other about once a month, and we have many mutual friends, but this time it was just the 2 of us. No company, drinking beer. After a couple of bottles, he says he updated his resume yesterday and that everyone should keep an updated resume handy. Asks, "Do you have an updated one?" I immediately sensed something was up and said, "No, why? Do you know something you want to share with me?" He replied, "Well, I'm just saying, resumes should always be handy, but I obviously can't tell you Bob is thinking of firing you, but I also can't say he isn't thinking of firing you." I thanked him for the beer and left soon after. So I understood I was going to be fired. And most likely, Bob had just asked me to hire my own replacement, train that person to do my job, and then hand over my position to him. This is where the sweet moment of malicious compliance begins. I fully comply with the instruction to hire a 4th team member and pick someone who perfectly fits Bob's idea of who processes the most tickets. Meaning I look for not very smart people with a couldn't-careless attitude who don't care about the client. After all, when Bob talked about my tickets, client satisfaction didn't interest him at all. A bunch of applications come in. There are good ones, but I weed them out immediately. I choose resumes full of mistakes and with minimal experience in the field. I invite precisely these people for interviews. The interview stage was trickier because Bob and someone from HR were sitting in now, but I was the one mostly asking questions and giving my opinion on the candidates. And since I'd weeded out the good ones beforehand, Bob chose the best of the worst. And in my opinion, not even the best. One candidate was quite good, but I asked him meaningless questions, and when he couldn't answer them, I presented him as a complete idiot. Sorry, John. I steered Bob towards one candidate, whom he ultimately chose because he'll work very fast and process a ton of tickets. By that point, I already had an agreement for a new job starting in 4 months, but I wanted Bob to fire me himself for a fat severance package. After 2 months of training Mr. Newbie, I only taught him the basic tickets. He handled them quickly but made a lot of mistakes, and complex tasks just piled up in the queue. Carl noticed this since only he would be able to take them after I was fired. I let him in on my plan. As if on cue, he had just gotten an offer from another company. Carl also couldn't stand Bob and decided he would accept the offer but could wait a couple of weeks to quit right after me for maximum effect. Then I informed Bob I had finished training the newbie, and a week later, he tells me regretfully that he has to fire me because my performance hasn't improved. He actually presented me with the fact that I processed few tickets while training another person. "You're such an idiot, Bob." He even wished me luck finding a new place with my work ethic. That was the day I'd been waiting for. And I just thanked Bob and reminded him I was now entitled to 4 months severance plus 2 months of unused vacation that also had to be paid out. As I was walking out, I told Carl about it, and he opened his desk drawer, pulled out a signed 2-week resignation notice, and headed for Bob's office. My girlfriend happened to have vacation left, and we decided to head to New Zealand for 4 weeks the next week. That's where I proposed to her. A month after returning from New Zealand, I started my new job with a higher salary and a great boss. I thanked Hans again for the warning, and he kept me updated on how my former department rapidly fell apart. Later, Bob himself was fired. When it happened, I was even offered his position, but I refused, even though it would have been the perfect revenge moment. About 5 years later, that is, last year, Hans and I founded our own company. We do pretty much the same thing, but in a different city. And so far, everything is going great.